The wind screamed like a beast through the frozen mountains. Snowflakes hit Jack's face like tiny knives as he stepped out of the broken hover truck. The engine had died just minutes ago, but it felt like hours. He looked around white, in every direction, no roads, no signs of life, only cold silence. Jack was a cargo runner, bringing supplies from one outpost to another across the frozen planet of Tharnes. Usually, his hover truck worked fine, but something had gone wrong. The temperature had dropped fast. And then, the engine had simply shut off. Now, he was alone. Miles from help, and the sky was already turning gray. He kicked the side of the truck, muttering, "Stupid machine." The screen inside blinked red. Warning of low power and fuel line freeze. Jack wrapped his jacket tighter, grabbed a flare gun and a thermal blanket, and stepped back outside. His breath came out in sharp clouds, his fingers already going numb. If he stayed here, he'd freeze by night. He opened the back of the truck, where the supply sled was stored. He pulled it out slowly, trying to plan a way forward. The sled was heavily loaded with food, fuel cells, and medical kits. If he left it behind, the mission failed and people would suffer. But if he tried to carry it alone, he might collapse before going 10 steps. He stared into the white blur ahead, trying to see if there was any hope. That's when he heard it. A soft sound, at first like snow crunching under claws. He turned sharply, heart pounding, hand on. His blaster, from behind a thick snowdrift, a shape appeared at first. He thought it was a wild animal, but then he saw the eyes sharp, glowing amber, intelligent. The figure stepped closer, revealing a tall, muscular form covered in thick silver fur. It moved on 2 legs, then suddenly dropped to 4, sniffing the ground near the truck. Jack didn't move. He aimed his blaster but didn't shoot. This wasn't just a creature, was something else. He had heard stories about them. Pharans, a race of canine-like aliens, once used as war beasts in ancient battles, built strong, smart, and loyal but often treated like tools. Most humans never saw one up close. She could now tell it was female. Looked at him, not with hunger, not with anger, but with calm curiosity. She tilted her head slightly, as if asking what he wanted. Jack slowly lowered his weapon. I'm stuck," he said, not expecting her to understand. He pointed to the broken engine, then to the sled, then to the sky. The Pharan watched carefully, her ears twitching with every sound. Then, without warning, she walked toward the sled. Jack stepped back, unsure. She sniffed the sled, circled it, and crouched down and gripped one of the metal handles with her clawed hands. With a grunt, she pulled just a few inches, but it moved. Jack stared, speechless. "You want to help?" he asked. She didn't speak, but her eyes didn't look away. Instead, she reached down again, now planting her feet into the snow. Slowly, she pulled the sled again, this time further. Jack blinked, trying to understand what was happening. Was this real? Was he being rescued by a creature the galaxy had abandoned long ago? The cold wind reminded him that questions could wait. He grabbed rope from the truck, tied it around the sled, and gently looped it around her chest and shoulders. She didn't fight him, only waited, silent and patient. When he was done, she pulled again, this time dragging the full sled with steady strength. Jack followed behind, still in shock. The sun was fading, and the sky turned deep blue. As they moved slowly across the frozen plains, Jack whispered, "Guess we're partners now." She didn't reply, of course, but he swore he saw her ears twitch at his voice. Behind them, the hover truck faded into the snowy distance. Ahead of them, nothing but cold, danger, and a long road to safety. And yet, Jack no longer felt truly alone. Something about the way she walked, the way she led, without fear, gave him hope. He didn't even know her name, but deep in his heart, he had a strange feeling this journey would change everything. and the world would remember the day a human soldier was saved by a girl who walked on all fours. The wind didn't rest that night. It roared louder, as if angry that Jack was still alive. His hands shook as he tried to light the emergency fire stick. But the flame kept dying in the wind, finally, with one last try. The fire caught and burned low, weak, but enough to keep them from freezing. The canine alien girl stood a few steps away, her silver fur blowing in the wind. She didn't sit, didn't curl up, didn't try to warm herself. She just stared out into the snow, as if guarding him. Jack wrapped himself in the emergency blanket and watched her carefully. He had tied her to the sled earlier, but now she had ripped the ropes off with one sharp tug, yet she had not run, hadn't attacked. She was still there, by choice, he remembered. Old Army talks about her kind, bioengineered fighters used in planetary wars. Fast, obedient, silent. Most were shut down or abandoned after peace came, but this one was still alive and helping him. Jack picked up a ration pack and opened it. It wasn't much, just a protein bar and some heat-activated soup. He took a bite, then broke off half and offered it to her. At first, she didn't move, her eyes still scanning the white hills. But then she stepped forward, slowly, cautiously, and took the food from his hand without touching him. He smiled a little. "So, you're not wild after all," he whispered. She sniffed the soup can, then pushed it toward him, rejecting it. Jack shrugged and finished it himself. The night dragged on. The fire hissed against the snow. Jack fell asleep with a blaster by his side, just in case. But when he opened his eyes again, it was because of the sound of crunching snow. She was pulling the sled again, not trying to escape, not running away, but heading north toward the closest outpost, the same direction he had programmed into the truck before it failed. Jack got up, still half frozen, and followed, stumbling behind her. His legs aching, the sled was heavy, and yet she didn't slow down. Her hands and feet dug into the snow with each movement. She growled softly sometimes, maybe from pain, maybe just to push herself harder. He tried to speak to her, but she never answered. She would only look at him now and then, long enough to let him know she hadn't forgotten he was there. Midday came, but the sun on this planet barely gave warmth. Jack's boots were soaked, and his fingers were stiff, even inside. His gloves, at one point, he tripped and fell into the snow face first. She stopped, turned, and waited. Jack didn't move for a moment. The snow was so cold. He felt like giving up right there. But then her shadow covered him. A deep growl escaped her throat, not angry, but like a command. "Get up." Jack pushed himself up, coughing, brushing the snow from his face. All right, he muttered. "I'm up." They walked for hours more, the silence between them growing deeper, but not uncomfortable. Jack began to notice little things, like how she would pause at certain places, sniffing the air before moving again, as if sensing danger. She had survival instincts he couldn't match, and somehow she was choosing to share them with him that night. They stopped near a half-frozen tree stump. Jack managed to light another fire, and this time she came closer. Not to the flames, but to him. She lay near him, her back turned, but not far. Jack looked at her, wondering who she had been before. All this, what she had lost, why she was still out here alone. Without thinking, he whispered, "You need a name?" She didn't react. "I'll call you Kara," he said softly. Don't know why, but it fits. Still no reaction, but she didn't growl either. The fire cracked as snow fell gently around them. And for the first time in 2 days, Jack felt like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't going to die out here. And Kara, the girl who had no voice but a fierce heart, kept her eyes open through the night, watching the dark, guarding them both like it was the only thing that mattered. Somewhere between the snow and silence, a bond had started. Not spoken, not understood, but real, and in this frozen world. That was enough to keep walking tomorrow, asterisk. Jack woke to the feeling of warmth against his back. For a second, he thought it was the sun, but the sky was still dark gray. Then he realized Kara was there, curled slightly behind him, her body heat fighting the cold that wanted to creep into his bones. He didn't move, didn't speak, just lay still, listening to her slow breath. Even in sleep, her ears twitched, alert to every sound. The fire had died during the night. But he hadn't frozen, because of her. When she noticed him stir, Kara stood and moved away without a word, as if embarrassed she had been close. Jack didn't call after her, just smiled to himself and packed up their things. They moved again. Across a stretch of land where snow turned to ice, thick glassy sheets that cracked under the sled's weight, Jack took the front this time. Helping steer while Kara pulled, he tried talking again, not expecting answers, but needing to fill the silence. Back on Earth, he said. People would have called you a good girl. Kara didn't look back, but her tail moved slightly, almost like a flicker of amusement. Jack continued, maybe you were built in a lab, trained like a tool. But I don't see a tool when I look at you. No reply. But the silence didn't feel cold this time. It felt shared. Later that day, they reached a frozen stream. The ice looked thin, but Jack thought they could cross if they moved fast. He tested it. 1 step, 2, then crack. He didn't even have time to scream. Just a rush of freezing water swallowing him. Kara didn't hesitate. She dropped the sled rope and leaped onto the ice, claws digging in, snow flying from her paws. She slid toward the hole, tail lashing behind her. Jack was sinking fast, his gear dragging him down, darkness wrapping around his legs. Then sharp claws grabbed his coat. A growl above the water, and he felt himself yanked upward. She pulled with her whole body, slipping on the edge, her arms shaking, until finally, he broke the surface. Coughing, gasping, alive, they rolled onto the bank, wet, shivering, Kara lying beside him, her chest rising fast with heavy breaths. Jack turned his head, looked at her, and whispered, "You saved me." She didn't answer, but her eyes stayed locked with his. And something passed between them, no words. Just truth. Jack sat up slowly, teeth chattering. "We need a fire." Together, they dragged branches, dried their clothes. As best they could, Kara shook her fur like a dog, sending ice flying. Jack laughed for the first time in days. It hurt his throat, but it felt good, while the fire crackled. He reached into the emergency kit and pulled out a patch. He walked to Kara, knelt, and gently pressed it on a gash above her paw. She flinched, but didn't pull away. "You don't have to keep protecting me," he said, "but I'm grateful you do." The night was quieter than before, and for once, Jack felt like he belonged out here. Not as a soldier, not as a driver, but just as a man, surviving with someone who should have hated him. But didn't. Kara lay beside him again. Not as close this time, but not far either. The stars above blinked gently, as if watching them too. Jack whispered, "Tomorrow, we'll make it closer to the ridge." Kara's ears twitched. She didn't speak. She never did, but somehow, Jack knew she had heard him, and that she agreed, and deep in the snow, beneath silence and scars, something was beginning to grow, slow, real, and unbreakable. The snow had stopped falling, but the cold was worse than before. It wasn't the kind that bit your skin, it was the kind that crawled into your bones. Made your breath feel sharp and heavy. Jack and Kara moved slowly now. The sled lighter, but their steps heavier. Jack's limp had gotten worse, and Kara's paws were red from ice cuts. Still, neither of them stopped. The sky was dark, even though it was morning. The planet's twin moons had dipped below the trees, and everything around them looked like it had been dipped in silver. Silent and still, Jack's voice had grown quieter. Since the fall in the river, he didn't talk much anymore, only when he needed to, but his eyes searched Kara's face often, as if trying to understand something just beyond reach. Around midday, they reached a broken bridge, a relic from a war long past. The metal beams twisted and half buried under snow. Jack squinted at it. Then the map. "If we try to go around, it adds 2 more days," he said. His voice dry from the cold. Kara crouched low, sniffed the wind, then stood tall again. Her body alert, muscles tight, without warning. A sudden sound cracked through the trees. A hiss, then another, followed by movement. Jack spun, pulling his blaster, but it was already too late. They were surrounded. 6 figures emerged from behind rocks and trees, thin, long-armed aliens wearing scrap armor and carrying makeshift weapons. Bandits. One of them pointed a spear at the sled. "Leave it and go," he said in a low voice. "No one dies if you obey." Jack raised his weapon, but his hand trembled. He was too weak. Kara stepped in front of him without hesitation, her growl deep, dangerous. The bandits laughed. "You brought a pet to fight for you," one said, taking a step closer. That's when she charged. No hesitation, no warning. Just pure speed and fury. She moved like a shadow with claws. Her first strike sent one of the bandits flying into a tree. Another raised a gun, but she was already on him, tearing it from his hand and slamming him to the ground. Jack fired 2, hitting one in the leg, another in the shoulder. The rest scattered, some screamed. Running into the woods, the last one stood frozen, blood on his face, staring at Kara as she crouched low. Ready to leap again, he dropped his weapon and ran. It was over in less than a minute. The snow was painted with broken branches, dropped weapons, and blood. Kara's breathing was loud in the stillness, and Jack could see the red stain on her side. "You're hurt," he said, rushing to her. "Let me see." She growled softly, but didn't stop him. He pressed another patch to her wound, hands shaking. "You saved my life again." He whispered, "That's twice now." Kara blinked slowly, her breath steadying, then turned away, curling beside the sled as if nothing had happened. But Jack sat beside her, eyes wide, thoughts spinning. This wasn't a pet. This wasn't just some forgotten creature. This was a fighter, a protector. Maybe even something more. She didn't do it because she had to. She chose to, and that choice made all the difference. Later that night, as they sat under a broken roof near the bridge ruins, Jack lit a fire and whispered, "If we make it out of this, I'm going to make sure the world hears your story." Kara didn't look at him. T swore her tail moved again, just a little, like a silent answer, and in that quiet moment, surrounded by broken steel and cold winds, the bond between human and beast became something unshakable, something even war couldn't destroy. The morning came slow, pale light spilling across snow that no longer looked peaceful. Broken weapons and old bloodstains painted the ground like a forgotten battlefield. Jack woke first, body sore, eyes heavy. He looked over at Kara, still curled tightly near the sled, one arm over her ribs where she'd taken the cut. Her ears twitched as he moved. She wasn't asleep, not fully. Maybe she never really slept. Jack crouched beside her, opened the medkit again, and whispered, "Let me clean it right this time." This time, she didn't resist as he unwrapped the patch. His hand brushed against the metal around her neck, a thin collar half buried beneath fur. He hadn't noticed it before, but now that he looked closely, the edges were burned, like someone had tried to remove it. He blinked, then gently moved her fur aside. Engraved on the collar were faded symbols, military codes, letters and numbers, and one name. Not hers, not Kara. It was a unit name, property of Project Fenrir 9, combat class, discontinued.
Oh.
Jack stared at the words. His chest felt heavy. She Wasn't just some survivor. She had been made, trained, then thrown away. Used in a war she probably didn't understand, then left behind like trash. Kara opened one eye and watched him as he read the collar. But she didn't growl, didn't move. She let him see, Jack whispered. Is that who you were? The wind didn't answer, and neither did she. He sat back and pulled off his glove. With shaking fingers, he reached for the old lock on the collar. She tensed for a second, but didn't stop him. He worked carefully, silently, until with a soft click, the metal opened. The collar slid from her neck and fell into the snow. A tiny sound, but it echoed like thunder. Kara stood slowly, lifted her head high, and looked toward the mountains. There was something different in her eyes now, something free. Jack didn't speak again. He just packed the sled, loaded what they had left, and tied down the supplies. When he turned around, Kara was already in front of it. Not waiting for orders, not waiting for help, just ready. She lowered herself and gripped the rope. In her hands again, Jack stepped beside her, placing one hand gently on her shoulder. "You're not property," he said, "not to anyone." They didn't talk for the rest of the day. They just moved step after step. The snow got deeper, the trail harder. But somehow, their silence felt stronger than words. That night, as they rested beneath a rock ledge, Jack lit a fire with the last of the fuel sticks. Kara sat close, her eyes reflecting the flame like molten gold. Jack pulled a small photo from his coda, picture of his squad. All gone now. He held it out to her. "These were my people," he said quietly. She looked at it, then at him, and gently lowered her head beside his knee, resting there. There were no medals, no orders, no leaders out here. Just two souls walking through a frozen world. One who had been made to fight, one who had lost too much, and both learning what it meant to choose their own path. Asterisk, the wind was sharper now, like blades cutting through every layer of cloth and fur. Even Kara's thick hide couldn't stop her from limping now. Her legs moved slower, her breathing deeper, and every pull of the sled made a sound. Not from the sled, but from her bones straining beneath the weight. Jack had stopped counting the days. They blurred into each other. A loop of snow, pain, and silence. But he knew they were close. The beacon from the outpost blinked weakly on his scanner still miles away. But real? He looked at Kara and saw her legs tremble, just slightly. Then steady again, her fur was crusted with ice. Her claws dull from digging into frozen soil, and her tail didn't move anymore. "Kara," he said, walking beside her, "let's rest. Even just for an hour." But she kept going. Eyes forward, breath fogging in front of her face, like steam from a dying engine. Jack gritted his teeth and pulled the rope too, trying to take some weight off her. But his leg gave out, and he fell. Kara stopped, turned, and stood still, staring at him. He didn't get up, didn't try. Just lay there with snow falling into his collar. He whispered, "Why are you still doing this? You're not a soldier anymore. No one's watching, no one's giving orders." She walked back slowly, her paws quiet in the snow. She knelt beside him, eyes full of something he couldn't name, not sadness, not pity, just something deep, ancient, and tired. He reached out and touched her arm. It was warm, even through the cold. "You've already saved me," he said. "You don't owe me more." She leaned her head down, pressing it gently against his chest. For just a second, then she stood, turned around, and lowered herself again before the sled. Jack closed his eyes, swallowed hard, and rose. If she wasn't giving up, neither would he. Together, they walked the last hill. The slope was sharp too. Sharp for the sled, and half the supplies tumbled down as they climbed. Jack barely noticed. Every step Kara took was slow, heavy. Like the ground didn't want her to rise. Near the top, she fell. Jack rushed to her side, her body shaking, breath coming in short bursts. Her paws scraped raw, blood mixing with snow. "No, no, not here," he said, dropping to his knees. "We're so close, Kara. Look." He pointed to the ridge, where faint lights shimmered in the distance like stars dancing through fog. She tried to rise, once, twice, then collapsed again. Jack didn't hesitate. He dropped the pack, pulled the last thermal blanket around her, then did something no one expected. He crouched beneath her, arms shaking, and lifted her across his back. The weight nearly crushed him, but he took one step. Then another. His boots slid, his leg screamed. His lungs burned, but he kept walking, for her, and somewhere behind them. The broken sled rested in the snow, forgotten, because at that moment nothing mattered more than getting her to safety. One man carrying a wounded alien beast up a frozen hill. Both of them broken but still moving. It didn't look like a rescue. It looked like loyalty. It looked like something rare. Something real. The kind of bond that couldn't be built in a lab or ordered by a general. It had to be earned, step by painful step. Jack climbed, whispering through frozen lips. "Just a little more. Don't let go now. We're almost home." The outpost gates came into view like a dream feint. Blinking lights behind glass walls, barely visible through the falling snow. Jack's knees buckled beneath him, but he didn't stop. Kara's body was heavy on his back, but it wasn't her weight that crushed him. It was fear. She hadn't moved in minutes. He stumbled forward, shouting through cracked lips, "Help! Someone, please!" His voice was hoarse, broken, barely louder than the wind, but someone heard. Two guards in thick jackets ran toward him, weapons ready. They saw the limp body across his back and paused. Confused. "Is that a Farron?" one asked. "She saved me." Jack coughed, falling to his knees in the snow. "Don't shoot, just help her." The guards hesitated, then finally called for a medic unit. Jack didn't remember much after that, just Flash's hands pulling her from his back. Warm blankets, someone checking his pulse. Voices shouting over the blizzard, and then darkness. When he awoke, the ceiling above him wasn't white, it was soft gray metal. Smooth and safe, he was inside, wrapped in clean sheets. Warmth pressing into his skin from every side. He blinked slowly, body sore, but alive. His first word wasn't "Where am I?" or "What happened?" It was Kara. The nurse beside him paused, looked down, then nodded. "She's alive." The nurse said softly, "Barely, but alive." Jack tried to sit up, pain flaring in every muscle. "Take me to her." They wheeled him down the hall, past blinking lights and hushed voices, until they reached the med bay, behind the glass. Kara lay on a large padded bed, covered in thermal gel and healing wraps. Her fur cleaned, her wounds treated, but her eyes were closed. Jack pressed his hand to the glass. "She's not just a Farron," he said quietly. "She's a soldier. A protector, a friend." The medic standing nearby looked at him, unsure what to say. Then Jack added, "And she's the reason I'm alive." Days passed, and Jack visited her every morning. He talked to her, told her about Earth, about dumb things like rain, chocolate, and bad music. He placed a collar on the table beside her, not around her neck, but like a relic of what she no longer was. Then one morning he walked in and saw her eyes open. Just barely, just a sliver of golden light. He froze, then smiled. "Hey," he whispered, "you came back." She didn't move much, but her eyes followed him, slow and steady. He stepped closer, rested his hand on her paw. "I told them your name," he said softly. "Kara. The one who walks through snow, who fights, who saves. Not because she's ordered, but because she chooses." Her ears twitched, just slightly, and her breathing grew stronger. A week later, she stood again. Not for long, not without help, but she stood. Jack was there to catch her when she nearly fell. "I've got you," he said, "just like you had me." When they were cleared to leave, they stood at the edge of the outpost gate together. Looking out toward the endless snow, Kara carried nothing, now not a sled, not orders, not chains, only freedom. And beside her, a human who would follow her wherever she chose to go. They didn't say goodbye to the cold, they simply turned away from it. Two survivors, one path, and a story no one would ever believe. But it was real as the way she finally looked at him and whispered her first word since waking. Jack. He blinked, then laughed quietly. Took you long enough. And together, they walked forward, leaving behind the snow, the silence, and everything they were supposed to be. To become something the galaxy had never seen before. A bond built not from duty, but from choice, from survival, from loyalty. From something deeper than either of them had ever known. From that day forward, the story of the human and the Farron girl who pulled the sled through the storm became more than just a rumor. It became legend.